Good afternoon, directors and management of the Leong and CDL group of companies, distinguished speakers, and colleagues. Thank you for joining us virtually at the 8th Annual Sustainability Forum, organized by the Group Corporate Secretariat Services and CDL Sustainability Team. Before we begin, may I please invite all speakers to turn on their cameras, including Mr. Sherman Kwek, CDL Group CEO, and Ms. Esther, CDL Chief Sustainability Officer, and our moderator for this session. We're pleased to have expert speakers, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, Director at NUS Center for Governance and Sustainability, Mr. Michael Tang, Head, Listing Policy and Product Admission, SGX RegCo, Mr. Joe Poon, Singapore Institute of Directors Governing Council Member and Professional Development Committee Chairman, Mr. Simon Yeo, ASEAN Climate Change and Sustainability Services Leader, Partner, Assurance, Ernst & Young, Ms. Wang Yulin, Partner and Sustainability and Climate Change Leader at PwC Singapore, Moderator Ms. Esther, CDL Chief Sustainability Officer, and Mr. Sherman Kwek, CDL Group CEO, who will be giving his closing remarks at the end of the forum. Now, may I please invite all speakers to smile for the camera and take a group picture with Sherman, please. We will take a photo on the count of 3. So 3, 2, and 1. Thank you, Ms. Sherman and speakers. Now let's begin with an opening presentation by Ms. Esther, CDL's Chief Sustainability Officer, to set the scene for a dynamic and enriching discussion today.
Okay, wonderful. So, since last forum, the world has changed a lot in the way we live, work, and run our business and travel and learn as well. And sustainability inarguably has become the mainstream agenda, whether it is on the parliament or in the boardroom. So the main question now is, how can we make sustainability a competitive advantage, turning risks to opportunities? And last year, I also shared the World Economic Forum's annual Global Risk Report. And this year, you can see that the number one risk, to no surprise, is infectious diseases, which is because of COVID's influence. And but among the top 10 risks, you can still see 5 green dots, which also show that climate risks are really occupying the top positions. And this has been reinforced by data that insured losses actually hit a new high at $42 billion for just the first half of this year, according to Aon Broker Insurance. And Sweet Ray actually even projected that climate risk will add another $183 billion to property insurance costs by 2040. That means insurance premiums will see a hike in the next 10, 20 years. And of course, IPCC's the latest report served as an alarm, a code red for humanity. And indeed, climate risks are existential risks and also business and investment risks. These are the risks that we highlighted actually based on World Economic Forum's report. The green one represents the environmental risk, the yellow social risk, and the dark green is actually the governance risk. And I'm sure some of these words have actually kept all many of us late sleepless night at like stranded, assets and new taxation, stringent new regulations, infrastructure, property damage, and, human rights issue, business disruption, and all. So businesses need to really navigate in a fast changing world that is faced with all these uncertainty and challenges. Mitigation will not be sufficient. Risk adaptation is really critical to turn risk to opportunities. And while COVID really, awakened the whole world that the health of our planet, people, business and economy is all interconnected and interdependent. And last year, we really saw a new dawn for sustainability and climate action. These are some of the global and regional and country commitment, whether it is, the EU Green Deal and UK and also US is back in the game and pledged 100% clean energy economy with net zero emission by 2050. And similarly, our ASEAN Climate Resilience excellence network as well. And while our largest economy in East Asia, China has declared that net zero by 2060, Japan, South Korea, and even our neighbor, Malaysia, and also Hong Kong, set 2050 as carbon neutral goal. I think most importantly, you can see that actually the sustainable stock exchanges worldwide and, G7 and some very advanced country has also pledged to adopt TCFD, which is the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, as mandatory reporting. And you can see that along the value chain, apart from financial, insurers and asset owner and investors are all pushing the agenda for net zero, and responsible banking is also on the rise. And Singapore Green Plan, I'm sure everyone is very familiar here, that these are the 5 pillars that have direct impact on any industry, any sector. And of course, being in the property sector, we are affected by almost everything, like, sustainable living, energy reset, the 80-80-80 goals that we have to green 80% of all buildings by 2030. And as of now, BCA announced that we are only hitting 43%. So the other 37% will have to be achieved in the next 9 years or so. And we are also looking at 80% of all new development by gross floor area to be super low energy buildings. That is actually 60% more efficient than normal. And the so-called best in class is actually 80% more, efficient than the convention. So green economy definitely is creating a lot of green job and also green opportunity for investment. And to be resilient for Singapore, we need to, fight against, rising sea levels, food security, and also moderate rise in urban heat as well. So these are the voices for change, which actually also represents that the business case is stronger than ever. Whether it is from, Larry Fink, from the largest asset manager, BlackRock, to highlight that investing company are expected to disclose their net zero emission, not just about climate strategy, or, they will be risk, being divested or voting against their director. Religious leaders are also pledging, and pushing for concrete solution come COP26 to save the planet. And of course, UN leaders have been talking about this for longest time, and now it's from pleading to really desperate voice that we are going to a point of no returns if actions are not taken. And of course, nearer home, Minister, for Sustainability and the Environment, Ms. Grace Fu, has also mentioned that. But what I like her quote here is like, how can we make sustainability not just a core pillar of the business, but also a competitive advantage? So what I'm going to share today is, some of these, facts. And so you can see that even nearer home, our DBS CEO, Puish also highlighted that business opportunities around ESG and the sustainability agenda is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity in the next 10 to 20 years. And of course, Mark Carney, who's actually the former chief of Bank of England and now the financial advisor to Boris Johnson. And he also highlighted the fact that companies and those who are invested in them and lend them money are part of the solution. And all of them will be rewarded. Those who are lagging behind or are still part of the problem will be punished. And in the next, 10 years or so, there will be 1.5 trillion US dollar investment opportunity per year, in order to achieve the UN's SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. And here are some data of the so-called responsible investment. The UNPRI is actually the apex body, and look at the AUM that they are managing. They're representing the voices of 4,150 investors, and AUM 121 trillion US dollar. If listed company want a share of this pie, they have to dish out very good ESG performance. And over the last year, ESG ETF, the exchange trading fund, assets has nearly tripled last year, and it is still, going up. And of course, sustainable finance similarly has actually doubled last year versus the year before. And year to date for 2021, it is still growing. This data is only up to end of July. So how are we going to really tap onto the rising sustainable funds and ESG funds and sustainable finance? We need to really present a very strong and balanced triple bottom line. So this is a quote, the latest quote just 2 weeks ago by Paul Pullman. Paul Pullman is really a global SDG advocate, the former Unilever CEO who was the first one to speak against quarterly reporting. And he announced officially that Milton Friedman's ideology is dead now. And we can't just focus on shareholders, expectation and quarterly, profit. And definitely now this mantra is wildly unfit and will be self-defeating. And we must kill the old philosophy and look at, take the long-term view and how do we, recover greener, cleaner, and better and more sustainable. And sustainability reporting is actually the focus of today's agenda. Just share with you some of the data. SP 500 companies, 95% of these 500 companies are already, have the ESG information publicly available. It's nothing really earth-shaking. That is also, we have to look at the quality of it and also credibility of the data. And according to a KPMG report, the top 250 largest company report on sustainability reporting. 96% of these 250 largest company report on their sustainability and ESG data, out of which 71% actually has already adopted external assurance. And afterwards, we were going to hear from Mr. Michael Tang, the SGX latest proposals, which include the assurance as well. And of course, we have here, we have heard that MAS has also published the first sustainability report. And of course, the managing director of MAS, Ravi Manan, also say that the lack of consistent climate disclosure standard is a challenge. And investors, banks, and financiers will all ask for it. GRI, which is by default the world's largest and top reporting standard, has also issued the latest universal standards, giving more focus on climate and human rights issues as well. So let me share a little bit more, give an update on CDL's own value creation model, which some of you have already heard. And then at the core of it, we still adopt our ethos that was established in 1995. Conserving as we construct. And we also look at ESG. How can we integrate it to raise the capital? Look at, the future, not just today. So we actually issue our sustainability blueprint using our sustainability report in 2017, setting goals and targets aligned with global goals. And every quarterly, we also give an update on the key strategic goals of our future value 2030. And look at the bottom of it is represent our long journey of 14 years of sustainability reporting. And we were very honored to be the first Singapore companies to have published a dedicated SR using GRI standard in 2008. And starting from 2009 onwards, we actually has engaged external assurance every year. And we adopted the GRI check, standard. And over the years, you can see that the framework has grown from 2008 GRI as the core, climate CDP, which is actually Carbon Disclosure Project, started in 2010, and IIRC report adopting the integrated approach. That means looking at ESG through the financial and business lens since 2015, and Sustainable Development Goals since 2016. And we were one of the first to embrace TCFD since 2017, Science-Based Targets since 2018, and SASB, which is actually gaining a lot of traction now among investors since 2020. And the last but not least is Climate Disclosure Standard Board. And we have also GRI, SASB, CDSB being externally assured afterwards. And Simon is going to share a little bit more of the insight on that. And under SBTI, and we also, and TCFD, actually we have engaged PwC to have conducted two climate change scenario planning. Afterwards, we are going to hear, from Yulin as well. And of course, the whole framework here is anchored on the 4 pillars of TCFD, which including corporate governance, risk management, matrix and standards, as well as strategy. Afterwards, you will hear from Dr. Lawrence Lowe to talk about how can we connect corporate governance with sustainability and create business value. And of course, last but not least, we will have Joe to talk about, what is the plan to help directors and management to cope with all these, rising expectation of ESG reporting. And if I could share, CDL's ESG strategy that anchor on 4 pillars, the 4I, and delivering the 3 deliverable. The 4I is actually integration, innovation, investment, and impact. Integration become, vertically, engaging, involving the board level, top management, operational level, offsite, onsite, and also the rank and file. That without integration, ESG will not, be effective, and no one will be working in silos. And adaptation is important to manage all the risks. So innovation technologies are very important, and we are very glad that with the Sherman's and agents in Foresight, we have actually set up a green building technology application team last year to support sustainable innovations, working together closely with our enterprise innovation team. So investment is important, whether we are investing company or investor. We look at how we can invest in green building technology to drive action. And everything we do has an impact, positive or negative. We have to, be prompt and be transparent. So we have actually, apart from the annual sustainability report, we also have a quarterly report that online on our cdlsustainability.com. The 3 deliverable, because building sector has high carbon footprint, accounting for almost 40% of greenhouse gas emission worldwide. Decarbonization is always the top of our agenda. Green building is also focusing on it, and the BCA is also pushing the agenda for new or existing building. Digitalization, innovation are key to drive change. And last but not least is disclosures and communication. And all these points to one point that we want to, dish out very good report card, as you can see here, that we are very honored to be listed on 13 global ESG ratings and rankings. And all these are very powerful, supporting, evidence that we are aligned with global best practices. For MSCI, we have been on this gold rating standard for 11 years, 10 years, AAA standard. And for CDP, we are already, the first A-list company for both climate action and water security as well. And last year, although it was a challenging year, we continued to maintain high profile and made it to, a few very top and prestigious awards, including the 50 Climate Leaders, which is a campaign hosted by Bloomberg, and we're the only Singapore company made it there. And of course, in terms of sustainability reporting, we are very honored to be voted the best integrated report, plus a few others, honors as well. Race to Zero is our future, whether it is for the planet, for people, for businesses. And the Race to Zero is actually the world's largest, ever largest, alliance by UNFCCC. And you can look at all these city, country, businesses, and organizations together. They represent 50% of the world's GDP and 25% of emission. And we actually at CDL has also pledged, make a bold pledge in February 2021 to become the first Singapore real estate company and pledge the support of a World Green Building Council's net zero building commitment. And this is actually backed by our long journey, with a very prudent planning and pathway. And then such as in 2019, actually our CEO joined 87 world global companies to pledge 1.5 degree business ambition. And science-based target, we are the first companies to have pledged, to secure the SBTi validated carbon reduction target in 2018 based on 2 degree warmer scenario. And we have just submitted the new set of targets that is based on 1.5 warmer scenario. So with this, it ends my presentation, and enjoy this video. Great. Thank you so much for your attention. And now let me, bring in our first speaker, Dr. Lawrence Low, who is going to share very content-rich, presentation. Over to you, Dr. Low.
Yes, thank you, Esther. Let me do the sharing first. Yeah, I think, wait, let me, never mind. Let me just, okay, yes. Okay, just to double check, you can see the slide full screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Sherman, Esther, friends. I'm very happy to be here today. Of course, it's a virtual format. In fact, the title I was given for this talk today, very short talk, is Sustainability Mainstream into the Boardroom Agenda. In fact, perhaps I should actually change the title to Sustainability Live Stream into the Boardroom Agenda because it's virtual, but the least I can do is to actually show some physical building in case you miss them. These are real buildings. In fact, I would say this is the best building in the CBD. In fact, the best in Singapore. So let me just start by saying something, how this talk and how my presence here today was actually started, because there was one night after publishing this article invited by SID in the Boardroom Matters. I know my colleague Poon is here from SID. I got this published, and that very night I sent a copy to Esther by WhatsApp, and immediately she fired back, on WhatsApp and say, "You are on." So I said, "On what?" She said, "Yeah, on for our next forum. Share some of the state of play findings, and how to integrate sustainability in corporate agenda." So the moral story is this: be careful who you send your articles over WhatsApp to. Don't send it to Esther; she will fire back, and you're on. So I'm very happy to be on today to set the stage, even though I have no stage. But let me just set the stage by showing a montage, because I believe this is an external objective view of the Hong Leong Group, and in particular CDL. These are some of the things I cut and paste from all the entities of the Hong Leong Group, including CDL and the REITs and Hong Leong Finance, Hong Leong Asia. Some of the keywords I get. In fact, it's very interesting because I'm also amazed by at least just one word, which is get involved. The word involved, it is very important, because to get mainstream, you have to get involved. And I believe this is also consistent with, say, Hong Leong Finance, future focused, value driven, and of course, CDL, the inevitable advancing change resilience. So I think with this set on stage, it is very important that we actually embed and internalize the sustainability agenda across the entire organization, not just in the boardroom, not just even in the agenda. So I'm going to share with you very quickly some of the key findings I have over the just this 1 year. Some key findings I have gotten through my research center at NUS Center for Governance and Sustainability. I fresh some of them. I'll go along the pace as Esther pace. I'll talk as fast as Esther. Okay, so I will start by saying, we have this study, the SGTI ranking, and just now Esther mentioned, in fact, CDL has also been doing very, very well in the last 2 years. In fact, it's in the top 1% of 500 over companies in Singapore. So I think you actually literally walk on water. So I have this study that was presented just in August, that the ranking of all the key companies, the listed companies on the Singapore Exchange. And I think across the board, you can see this is called the SGTI, the Singapore Governance and Transparency Index. It moved up quite every year, quite well. And last year we again is record high, although it's not well enough for a good score, 68.7. But I just want to highlight the framework that we use. It's a broad framework, 5 key domains. The components, the BREAD, board, rights of shareholders, stakeholder engagement, accountability, disclosure. And I think perhaps for today, if you look at the 5 components, in particular, if you want to talk about responsibility, the engagement of stakeholders is very important. And I just have a couple of findings from this to set the scene, state of play, perhaps for the panel discussion later. Is in fact, if you look at the 5 components, we normalize, adjust all the score to fit 100% because they are not equal in absolute numbers. So you can see along the 5 components, even though the center component, which I highlighted with a red arrow and a red box, even though stakeholder engagement over the last 5 years have started low, but again, it is relatively much lower than the other component, particularly the shareholders. You can see there's a great chasm, a great distance between shareholders and stakeholders. And I think that this is something very revealing. In fact, I was happy at this 4 years ago in the first year we put this in. It started 30, which is very low, but over the years it climbed up, but it seemed to stabilize. Yeah. And another indicator that I have got, it's very interesting to see at the corporate level, not at the sustainability report level, but more at the general level, how important are non-financial disclosure in terms of indicators. Also, we are looking at, say, customer satisfaction or market share, or even certain engagement of the stakeholders. But it's at the corporate level, you can see that this is actually surprisingly very low compared to financial performance indicator. This were very heavily and explicitly stipulated at the corporate level, at the corporate report. And another thing which I highlight before I jump on to the next study, again, it's something very surprising. Within sustainability itself, I have a lot of findings, but I'll just highlight 1 or 2 as nuggets for further discussion. You can see, among all the various indicators of sustainability, say even compared to employee, compared to value chain, the focus on customer is actually very low. Safety of customer, health of customer, and I believe I'm very happy actually. In fact, that CDL in particular has paid very much to the attention. Of course, your customers' safety is very important, but this is something across the board in Singapore is not quite emphasized. Let me move on to another set of study, which is also this year. I give always all the latest in the market. This is another study, Sustainability Reporting Review. We do it biennially. The most recent one was in May, together with my research center. It's a joint study with Singapore Exchange, and I have to say, Mr. Michael Tang, who is a panelist, he's the co-leader together with me for this study. So you have any deeper questions, Michael will be in the panel to answer the questions. But let me just highlight again a few nuggets of finding, which are interesting, which might lead to better discussion. Let's say the first thing, linkage of sustainability to performance. The performance data are well disclosed, performance linked to target also heavily increased. But very interestingly, even though it increases, we found that among the listed companies, of course, it increases over the last 2 years. Very few of them link top executive remuneration to sustainability performance. Sustainability performance, I think this is something perhaps we could look at it, because I know what you pay is what you get. If there's still this disconnect between what you emphasize in sustainability in terms of the incentive you give to your leaders, I think there's a limit how much we can achieve. And I think 1 quarter actually have certain linkages, which I think is far lower than just providing sustainability data. Almost 100% of them do it, but to link it to executive compensation, not too many people do it. And then the other linkages are with your business strategy. So your sustainability targets, well and good. You have 1 year target, 3 year target, or more than 5 years. well and good, but how do these targets or even like net zero, Esther talk about net zero, how do this link to business strategy? Is still not high enough. In fact, I would expect almost 100% for number D, linkage of targets with business strategy. Right now, barely 2/3 of them. In fact, less than half link targets with even financial performance of the company. I think this is less than half, which is not very good. I believe I'm not saying CDL is this. I think CDL has fulfilled, but I'm talking about the state of play in the entire system. In fact, how about the board itself? My title was to mainstream into the board. So we look at some of the disclosure at the board. I think disclosure are very important because bona fide investors, stakeholders don't have the insight, conduit a channel to talk to the management and the board. So what you disclose is very important. You can see that not even half, in fact, dropped. The board are not even involved in the determination of material ESG factors. And I think this is the most important starting point. The board must get its hands, wet together with the senior management in determining the material ESG factors. Otherwise, the down the line to the rank and file across the organization, all the people might be barking up a different tree. So if everybody do it together, I think it is very important. And I think I'll just talk about this before I talk about climate. I think this is good news since I have colleagues like Yulin and Simon in this. I think this is good news for them. We have to look at the empty cup, not the full cup. In fact, only 2.8% of companies use external assurance. I think CDL is, of course, within this 2.8%. I think that this is not very good because many of the disclosure and practices in sustainability, you actually have to have a certain degree of verification. So this is definitely not good enough. Let me just end with one more nugget of finding, which is climate change reporting. This is something, of course, in the nascent stage. CDL is, of course, in the frontier, leader of the pack, but only about 1.9% of my sample, in fact, not a sample, it's a population of listed companies. About 11 of them have some semblance of climate reporting. Only 9 of them initially has used the TCFD framework, 9 of them in the initial. In fact, this TCFD climate change reporting is very important. Just 1 month ago, Business Times carry an editorial about importance of climate disclosure, and more importantly, the assurance, is very important. And in fact, I also published an article in Business Times about how businesses need to be ready for climate change reporting, particularly now that TCFD is going to be somewhat required on a comparison basis. I think Michael will go into that later on about the consultation exercise that's going on, at least with the listed company. So I have this study on the early adopters. In fact, the good news is just yesterday, it was published in an international journal, academic journal. It's an international journal of environmental sciences, so it's okay. So at least it's gone through some scholarly verification. So I know for some years I've been fighting, trying to build this business case to fight climate change. Even 2 years ago, almost 2 years, I even try to highlight some of these business case. I think the business case is the most important. You can talk all you want about climate change. It must, companies, management, even the employees or all the stakeholders must see that it is in their very self-interest to do it. So again, just a highlight, I think probably some of the panelists may have seen the detailed study. I have a collection of 2 studies over the last 3 years that actually demonstrated the positive and significant relationship between sustainability as measured by the reporting with first the firm value, the market value, which is the stock value, and secondly the brand value. And I have to say up front, the brand value is not just pure marketing effort, not greenwashing, but it is actually a very established methodology that I have adapted from brand finance, and they estimate the future income stream using a scientific method. to calculate the brand value or the equity, brand equity. So I have this result, and if anyone want to see the technical papers, is available. But the one-line sentence is, yes, there's a business case. Sustainability lead to two value with two most important stakeholders. One, investors, meaning market value. So if investors value it, one of the things that can happen is cost of capital get lower. So that will increase your bottom line. Number two, consumers. Your brand value go out, the consumers. In other words, it increase your revenue. It reduce your cost, which is investors. So again, this is the market, market plus brand value justification of the business case. And at least for the Singapore Exchange, I have, got this empirical results that are published and academically refereed. There's assurance in these studies, just like external assurance. They were actually academic referees going through the paper to make sure that your methodology, your data, your concepts are all correct. So these are two published papers. And last year, when I published this brand value paper, my corporate comms in NUS Business School was so excited. We even made, a full press release out of it. And, I say in the press release, company need to internalize this vision. And this is something that has to be shared across all levels and all departments. It is not just the responsibility of the CEO. Of course, the CEO oversees everything. And more important, not just the responsibility of the sustainability department. It's not just the responsibility of Miss Esther Ang. I think if that's the case, we are losing the entire picture. So Esther just now shared the right-hand side, the value creation model for CDL. I think it's my duty to share the left-hand side. Maybe Esther is too modest, that the right-hand side does not happen if we don't have a strong left-hand side, which is the governance structure, how you actually mainstream at CDL. And I'm very, very happy that, the board of directors at CDL has a board-level sustainability committee, which is chaired none other than the CEO, Mr. Sherman Kwek. I mean, I just have to say it's a statement of fact, not just take it as that. And of course, the key players are, there are many people, including Mr. Philip Leo inside, and of course, we know Miss Esther Ang play a very important part in this. So let me just almost end by sharing a 1-minute video clip. Maybe this, in lieu of the coffee break, I want you to be totally immersed in the message of this. It's a very beautiful song that I like because it was a song sung by Betty Miller 1990 and won the Grammy Award Song of the Year in 1991. I remember, just before I played the song, I was actually living in the USA. In 1990, when the song was first released, I just completed my comprehensive exam, officially admitted into doctoral candidature at MIT. So I actually was very homesick. So just as well, I played this song. I listened to it almost every day while writing the thesis. And maybe that because of that, my thesis actually won the top prize, the first prize in the whole world for the field, but never mind. Listen to it for 1 minute. Then I have a message after that. I hope you can hear the sound. If not, raise your hand. It's a very beautiful song about sustainability. Some of you may be too young to song.
From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the voice of hope. It's the
Okay, I hope you like the song. So let me end by saying From a Distance. You know, I think this is a very beautiful song because the world look blue and green, white mountains, ocean meet the streams. You talk about eager harmony, hope and peace in the land of Hong Leong Group and CDL. And I think it's the voice of not only every man, but every board and management. So with that, I think From a Distance, let me thank you very, very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for really sparing time before you need to rush off to the next talk at the SIAS, talking to the retail investors. Yeah. So can I just end off with one question to share your wisdom? What would be the one advice that you will give to companies, to prepare for the new dawn of sustainability, given all these more stringent demands from regulator, investors, stakeholders, and also consumer? Just one advice before I will let you go. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I think Esther, when you ask the question, you probably already have the answer. But let me repeat. I probably got one answer. I think you already have the answer, and this advice is not only to Hong Leong Group and the companies within the group, CDL and all that, but to all companies in general. I think the main thing is to get the leaders involved. Even though you operate from a distance, you need to go down to the ground. Sustainability is a very grounded exercise initiative. It's a very grounded motivation. It's a very grounded engagement. So, just like in my school, I have two programs, BBA, MBA. So BBA is better be around. It's not good enough. You need an MBA for sustainability, for Hong Leong Group, for CDL. You have to be MBA, must be around. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Leadership commitments is very important. So thank you and all the best in your next speaking assignment. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Esther. And
thank you. Bye-bye. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think most listed company were very excited about to hear, about the results of the public consultations, by SGX, the latest proposals. So we have, the best persons to speak about this sixth proposal to raise the quality and, the standard of reporting. Now over to you now, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Well, it's a hard act to follow Lawrence, but let me try. Today, I wanted to share with you our latest proposals on climate change. As I think Esther and Lawrence have mentioned, the consultation closed about 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to maybe give a recap of what are some of the proposals that we're now deliberating on. Tracy, if I could get your help with the slides. In this presentation, I'll touch upon two main areas, one on climate and sustainability, and another on board diversity. Tracy, next slide, please. Before I start on the proposals, I thought I'll do a stock take of what's happened so far and what are some of the global trends and developments in the market. So first, a brief history of our journey on sustainability reporting. In 2011, SGX issued a voluntary sustainability reporting guide, asking companies to start making sustainability disclosures, because we recognize that this is an area of increasing stakeholder interest. And in 2016, we upgraded this to a listing requirement. And since then, I think we are very familiar with the whole process of producing a sustainability report. In 2017, the TCFD issued recommendations on how to make climate-related financial disclosures. And consequently, we also issued a regulators column asking companies to start reporting and start considering their climate risks and opportunities. Since the rollout of our rules, we've had opportunity to review the reports by our companies, and we've done 2 reports with Prof. Lawrence Loh and the NUS Center for Governance and Sustainability. Results are encouraging, and I think some of the results also informed our proposals that we've put to the table. Now, in the next slide, I wanted to talk about this issue of climate change. Esther highlighted the WEF Global Risk Report on how climate, environment, risks are the top risks facing us today. In June this year, the G7 ministers finance ministers also made a declaration to ask everyone to move towards mandatory climate-related financial disclosures based on the TCFD framework. And they are of the view that doing so will provide investors with high-quality, comparable, and reliable information so that they can make their investment decisions. You will see in the next slide globally that other jurisdictions have also announced moves in the same manner. For example, in New Zealand, the government announced legislation, not listing rules, but legislation to mandate TCFD reporting by 2022. In the UK, they've announced a roadmap for how to progressively introduce mandatory TCFD reporting by 2025, starting with listed companies. And closer home in Hong Kong, the authorities have also announced intention to mandate TCFD reporting by 2025. In the US, they've also commenced consultation on climate reporting, and it appears that they are moving towards rulemaking in this aspect. So in the reporting frameworks front, I also wanted to give an update on what are the developments out there. I would summarize these as twofold. Firstly, we see greater collaboration between the existing standard setters. Esther has, I guess, introduced the concepts of GRI, SSB, integrated reporting, CDSB, and CDP. So what we've seen is that these framework reporters have, or these framework setters have come together in the last year or so to say that they want to work together to help reporters use their frameworks in a more coordinated fashion. The other trend I wanted to highlight here is that the IFRS has now said that they want to play a role in setting sustainability reporting standards as well. So there's an emergence of a new player in the market, the IFRS Foundation, which traditionally has been responsible for accounting standards and and ensuring that the financial account statements of the company represents a true and fair view of what's happening. We see that they also want to start setting sustainability standards. And globally, there's a great consensus that this IFRS Foundation is the right party to do so for the financial market. Not least the International Organization of Securities Commissions, which are the global association of MES and their counterparts. They have come up to say that they welcome this development and they're working closely together with IFRS and all the other framework setters in terms of coming out with a new sustainability reporting standard. In the next slide, I wanted to maybe talk a bit about this concept of materiality, which the IFRS Foundation and their work in coming out of this solution has also talked about. So they've analyzed the different lenses of materiality that different frameworks use, and they've put together sort of a building blocks approach to how these different standards and these different concepts of materiality can be used. At the bottom in blue, you will see a materiality lens that is investor focused. So I would call this the outside-in view of things. What is the impact of the environment and society on business ourselves? Now, traditionally, this has been focused on financial information, but increasingly non-financial information, I think investors are also placing a huge emphasis on and looking at the whole enterprise value of the company. So this lens, which the IFRS Foundation say that they will work on, is going to be focused on the investors' focused lens. Now, the other lens, which is the multi-stakeholder focused or the green building blocks in this diagram, I would call an inside-out approach, which looks at the impact of the business and the operations of the business on the external environment and the society. Now, the other framework setters, for example, GRI, would have some of these lenses as their definitions of materiality, and the IFRS wants to ensure that the investor-focused lens will be interoperable, can be operated, can be used together with the multi-stakeholder focused lens as well. So we can have both lenses depending on the company's desire on what are the lenses of materiality to use. Now, maybe I can spend the next maybe 6 to 7 minutes talking about the proposals that we put out. Well, the first proposal is really to ask companies to report on their climate-related disclosures consistent with the TCFD recommendations. Now, in this slide, the text in blue indicates the current components that we ask companies to put in their sustainability reports. The text in yellow indicates those that are new. So first, we want companies to make TCFD disclosures. Secondly, we're also asking companies to buttress their board statement to also inform investors on what is the governance structure for sustainability practices. And this is really in recognition of the fact that sustainability is an issue that we want at the top of the boards and senior management's minds. And therefore, we wanted more disclosures on how the company looks at sustainability and governs the whole sustainability process within the company. So our proposal is that companies, in the next slide, our proposal is that companies should do TCFD reporting for financial years starting 1st January 2022, and this would be on a comply explain basis. For some sectors of companies which are in a more carbon intensive industry or subject to a higher climate risk, then these sectors should start doing TCFD reporting on a mandatory basis in the subsequent year, meaning for financial years starting 1st January 2023. And then progressively for more sectors of companies, they should do so on a mandatory basis in subsequent years to come. Now you may ask, what are the sectors that are carbon intensive and of a high subject to high climate risk? In the next slide, I will show you that the TCFD has identified some of these sectors. So these are agri, food and forest products, energy, materials and buildings, transports, as well as the financial sector. So for these sectors, the TCFD has actually issued supplemental guidance on how to report against the TCFD. This is really in recognition that these are the most high-risk areas, industries, that should start doing TCFD reporting soon. The other classification that I put there is one that is arrived at by the Green Finance Industry Task Force, which is an industry task force that's set up by the MAS. So they've also looked at the high-risk sectors in ASEAN by looking at the GHG emissions as well as the contribution to GDP in the ASEAN economies. And they've arrived at much the same types of industries that should start doing climate reporting. So these are the sectors that we've proposed to start doing TCFD reporting on a mandatory basis. And the idea is that progressively, this will be rolled out to more and more sectors. Now, the next proposal that we put up is on assurance of reports. I think you hear more of it later, but currently, assurance of sustainability report is voluntary and not mandatory. But we recognize that this is a fast developing area, not least because the IFRS has said that they want to set sustainability reporting standards. So we expect that there will also be auditing standards that will need to be set in order to ensure that reporting is in accordance with those reporting standards. But we think that this is something that we need to start enhancing the governance structure within companies already. So the proposal is that companies must start subjecting reports to assurance. This can be by the internal audit function of companies, or alternatively, it can be done by external assurance provider. Currently, it's already a requirement that all companies need to have an internal audit function. And what we're asking is for the internal audit function to expand the scope of their audit plans to also include ESG and sustainability reporting information and processes. Now, the next proposal is on directors training, which I think will be close and dear to many of your hearts. Currently, if you are a first-time director of an SGX company, you will be required to undergo mandatory training, but those training do not currently have a dedicated component on sustainability. But we know that sustainability, especially climate reporting, is a new area for many of us. So to ensure that all directors have a common understanding of their roles and responsibilities, we're proposing that all directors undergo a one-time training on sustainability. And for first-time directors, that the components of training will also include one on sustainability. The next area is on reporting time frame. The current requirement is that if your sustainability report is contained within your annual report, then you follow the annual reporting timeline, which is 4 months after the end of the financial year. If your report is a standalone, then you have an additional month to do so. TCFD recommends climate reporting in accordance or at the same time as your financial filings. So we're suggesting that we should move this requirement to 4 months as well. So sustainability reports within 4 months, but if this is externally assured, because we recognize that it may take more time to do so, then you can follow the current requirements of 5 months with a summary in your report. Now, the next area that we put out is not a rule consult, but more a recommendation that companies should start reporting on a common set of core ESG metrics. And that's really to address concerns from investors that there's a diverse reporting matrix that different companies use. So what we've done is to look at the most commonly reported matrix that our companies use, distilled that down into 27 matrix, and ask our companies to start considering using these as a guide to your sustainability report. Now, the last section of our rule proposal is on diversity, and that's in the next slide. Now, globally, we've seen other jurisdictions step up on asking companies to provide more information and disclosures on what diversity, particularly around setting targets on the number of women on board. So our proposal is threefold in the next slide. In the next slide again, Tracy. Firstly, that all companies have in place a board diversity policy. Secondly, that this is disclosed in the annual report, together with the targets that have set to achieve these stipulated diversity, the plans and timelines for achieving these targets. And thirdly, to describe in the annual report how the combination of the skills, talents, experience, and diversity of the directors serve the needs and plans of the company. Now, I do not have a video or a song to conclude my presentation, but I'll be happy to take questions either now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. One of SGX's latest recommendations is for directors to take mandatory training on sustainability. We are very pleased to have Mr. Joe Poon, who is spearheading the training program at SID, to share his insight. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Marilyn. Okay, thank you. I want to thank Michael on two counts. One is being a buffer between me and the multimedia presentation from Prof. Loh. And second is really to actually set up the stage for the topic I want to discuss today by actually talking through the proposals and the views of the exchange. So I think we all heard first from Esther on the drivers and the imperatives of focusing on sustainability. And we heard from Prof. Loh about the link between company performance and the focus on sustainability and also the broader ESG. And I think what's more important is also what Michael mentioned in the second or the third slide, that this is a fast-moving, fast-changing topic. So we are all in this together, and we need to learn and adopt and actually adjust and fine-tune as we go along. So SID basically exists as a community to support the community of directors across Singapore and also the broader Asia. So what we want to do is actually bring to bear some of the content that will be useful to help directors be au fait and actually be able to manage and wrap their heads around sustainability. So from us, those of you who have actually attended our listed entity LDD course, you know that there is already a module on actually sustainability reporting. On top of that, along our calendars of classes, master classes, and webinars across the year, we constantly have actually modules and actually sessions on sustainability and ESG team topics. To build on and to support SGX, I intend to make the reporting mandatory. We are actually going to introduce what we call an ESG 101. The names are to be determined, but really a stripped down module within the LED program that allows us to have a better understanding of the needs and requirements around the topic of sustainability. And for those of us who are more interested, who wants actually a deeper insight on sustainability and the broader ESG beyond what this basic module can offer, we are now currently exploring with a couple of universities across the world, from the UK to Australia and some of the AUs in Singapore, to actually create and curate content, a deeper dive standalone course that focus solely on ESG. So that is actually Akadaka. We hope to be able to have something up in the next calendar year. So thank you. First, over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. One of the SGX proposals is about internal audit and external assurance for sustainability reports. Next, we will have Mr. Simon Yeo, Partner of Assurance at EY, to give us more clarity on this aspect. Simon, please.
Thank you, Marilyn. Afternoon, Sherman, Esther, board members, and management. Wow, after the engaging presentations by Esther, Prof, with music included, and my fellow panelists, do please bear with me as I try to keep my segment, which is assurance of ESG data, as interesting as possible. Can you move to slide 1, please? So as we have heard from previous speakers, today's market focus has significantly shifted towards creating resilience, long-term value, not only for shareholders, but also for a broader base of stakeholders, including customers, employees, communities, as well as the environment. And business organizations are evaluated not only based on traditional financial performance, but also by the quality of ESG disclosures and performance. For example, via models such as the value synthesis approach shared by Prof. Users as such have come to increasingly rely on ESG information for important decisions. Business leaders to drive their operations, banks for their credit risk management, insurance companies for better risk management and premium pricing, and investors for whether or not to make or break a deal. A survey conducted by EY on more than 300 institutional investors showed that more than 98% evaluated ESG information based on corporate disclosures in making their investment decisions, and more than 70% see independent assurance as valuable in increasing the quality, reliability of such ESG information and in strengthening trust and confidence. With the increasing dependence on ESG information, governments, regulators around the world, such as in EU, Australia, New Zealand, and now, of course, Singapore, are looking into mandating assurance of sustainability reports, and the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive will take effect in January 23, and this will require large EU companies as well as subsidiaries of foreign companies to disclose and seek limited assurance of the reported ESG information. Next slide, please. Okay, so Prof in his presentation provided a snapshot of the state of ESG reporting and assurance in Singapore. This slide shows a global snapshot of market practice for the assurance of ESG information based on a recent study by IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants. The study covered 1,400 large cap companies across 22 jurisdictions where these companies were headquartered, including in Singapore. Of the 1,400 companies surveyed, 91% reported ESG information. And of these companies, 51% provided some level of assurance on such information. The takeaway is, like it or not, ESG assurance is gaining traction and buy-in, as close to 50% of large cap companies around the world are already conducting it. The situation continues to evolve, and actually one key challenge is the need to align the differing assurance practices across jurisdictions. In Singapore, I should explain that the information may be slightly skewed compared to what Prof presented, as the observations were drawn based on a sampling of 50 large cap reporters. Next slide, please. Okay, preparing for assurance of sustainability reports. So I think the advice is yes, definitely prepare, right? Do not underestimate the challenge. I think there's a need to recognize that ESG audits can be very different, even more complex than traditional financial statement audits. While financial data is largely quantitative and measurable, ESG metrics cover a broad spectrum and can be less straightforward to assure. And the link between outcome and performance can be difficult to establish, as highlighted by Prof. For example, for indicators such as innovation, human rights, diversity and inclusion, and biodiversity conservation. There's also a need to address the requirement for dedicated, suitably trained resources. Unlike financial audits, which can be mostly managed by the finance team, sustainability and ESG is a horizontal that cuts across whole organization. And hence, there's a need to invest in upgrading, upskilling teams with the right knowledge, skill sets that effectively allow them to manage and report on ESG matters relevant to their business segments, when necessary, supported by external sustainability experts. The availability and accessibility of quality ESG data is another key challenge, and it is important to ensure that there's a proper ESG data management system with right tools, data template, software, with a robust internal review process, as this will enable the maintenance of a proper audit trail supported by robust processes and controls. Boards and management teams should have a good appreciation of material ESG issues and risks, and to ensure that these are also properly integrated into the ERM systems. From the board perspective, every assurance does pose a downside risk in terms of qualification or material findings, which could in turn impact trust and reputation, something to be avoided. And one way to avoid such unpleasant surprises is to consider commissioning a pre-assurance, sort of a full dress rehearsal assurance exercise designed to flush out any material processes or information gaps or deficiencies, which can then be properly addressed before embarking on the formal assurance exercise. Next slide, please. As requested, also touch on materiality assessment best practices. So the cornerstone of sustainability reporting are the material ESG factors, as you well know, which represent those sustainability related issues that are most important to your internal and external stakeholders. Boards need to get involved in not only identifying and managing such ESG factors from a compliance perspective, but also to understand the various stakeholders' evolving expectations around ESG disclosures and performance, and how best to address such expectations. Both GRI and SASB advocate materiality assessment as a good practice for achieving this. In our experience, materiality assessments are most valuable when it involves direct and timely engagement with internal and external stakeholders. In another EY survey, investors were asked to weigh in on what they see as the most valuable source for assessing a company's ESG practices and performance, and 89% cited direct company engagement. In recent sustainability reporting company scorecard issued by SGX to listcos, I believe one of the more common improvement points highlighted was to consult external stakeholders during materiality assessment. So as mentioned, timely stakeholder engagement is another best practice. In the past, the general rule of thumb was to conduct materiality assessments once every 3 years or so. However, given the uncertainty caused by COVID backdrop and the pace at which climate and sustainability regulations, tools, knowledge, best practices, and in turn stakeholder expectations are evolving, we recommend that assessments be conducted more frequently. In fact, many leading global sustainability companies, including CDL, who are conducting such assessments on an annual basis. And this provides a strong signal on the organization's commitment towards sustainable development and the creation of long-term value for its stakeholders. Next slide, please. So putting sustainability on the board agenda. In EY's June 21 report entitled The Future of Sustainability Reporting Standards, one of the key recommendations was for companies to put ESG on board agenda. Many reasons have been cited by Prof. Loh, my fellow panelists. And as I shared earlier, boards do need to get involved in managing ESG data, not only from a compliance perspective, but also from managing stakeholder expectations, many of which are becoming mission critical as governments are pushing for more market regulatory initiatives around ESG, decarbonization, investors, financiers starting to actively reallocate capital and green their portfolios, and consumers being to exercise choice to support green businesses and products. boards need to inform of such market developments and trends so as to be able to better understand if the company is effectively addressing, capitalizing on these trends so as to create resilience and long-term value. To effectively achieve this, boards will also need to look internally to assess readiness and capabilities to understand and make informed decisions around sustainability. As Prof put it, I mean, boards need to start getting hands and feet wet. All right. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions if there are, or wait for later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Simon. Climate reporting is a key focus for the future of sustainability reports. CDL has engaged PwC to conduct climate change scenario planning based on TCFD recommendations. We have Ms. Fang Yulin, Partner and Sustainability and Climate Change Leader, PwC Singapore, to cover TCFD and climate reporting. Over to you, Yulin.
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen now, or? Okay, let me just do this. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Awesome, thank you. Is it on present mode as well?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. And I just wanted to really thank Esther and also the rest of the CDL team, for inviting us today. By way of introduction, my name is Yulin, and I'm grateful as well to be able to journey with CDL in terms of the climate risk disclosures and scenario analysis for a number of years already. Just to share that we've been also looking at different things, not only from climate risk, decarbonization is very closely linked to climate risk as well, and reporting and also assurance as well. But I think, one of the other hats that I actually wear is really to drive the PwC's Center for Sustainability Excellence as well. One of the key things that we want to make an impact in, and we do see in the market, right, is capacity building. And, we will continue in terms of a capacity building for the ecosystem as well. I just wanted to start off with this report, and you might have seen this, which is it came out on 9th of August, which is the IPCC, what we call AR6WG1 report. It's essentially a report from scientists which shares the state of climate change more recently. And I just wanted to highlight a few things, which is that the scientists now say that human activity on the left-hand side is the definitive cause of climate change. In the past, they're very careful. They don't want to say something flippantly. They always say very likely, but they have confidence now and say that human activity or anthropogenic emissions are the result of climate change from human activity as well. The other very sad thing is that we're probably most likely to exceed 1.5 degrees by early 2030. We are already at 1.1 degrees Celsius. We're already seeing forest fires, floods, and other types of climate events. 1.5 degrees is, whilst we are aiming for that, is also not going to be great as well. And unless we decarbonize very quickly, and I know that CDL is very serious about decarbonizing, we will probably pass 1.5 at even 2 degrees Celsius. Prof, just now talked about a song, Bette Midler's song, which is actually from Beaches as well, for those who are born around that period. If you really wanted to watch a movie about climate change and how that features in the future, I would recommend Blade Runner 2049. And you have a sense, right, around 2050, what the climate actually looks like and how human civilization, is affected by it as well. But coming back to this, my own personal view is that because of all this, setting net zero targets are very critical. I think somebody just mentioned about science-based targets. Just now, I think Michael mentioned about it. They have also just revised that, to be net zero compliant as well. So I think there's definitely, from a global governance perspective, more focus on that. And I think, for us to avert this, it's essential that we set net zero targets. what does this mean for business? As I mentioned, set net zero targets, but at the same time, watch out for COP26 as well, which is going to be featured in the next month. From that, right, different countries will be negotiating their different climate also targets, and more regulations will ensue from that as well. My own personal view is that climate literacy, we talked about board education, but actually because, right, the carbon emissions is a long tail. It's not only going to be residing now, right, but because of its warming potential, it stays in the atmosphere for a very, very long time. So climate literacy is not something for just directors, although it's very important. It's something for management now or staff right now, but it's actually required for generations to come because of the long tail of carbon, right? And I think many have alluded to this, whether it's Michael, Esther, Simon, that accountability on climate and ESG will increase, which is one of the topics that we're talking about now, which is TCFD. Some of you might have seen, this graph from PwC, which is our PwC Net Zero Economy Index. And basically, in a nutshell, what this says is that you want to reach a 1.5 degrees Celsius world. For the largest countries, with the G20 countries, you need to decarbonize about 12% a year, right? Unfortunately, I think, you might have heard me say this as well, but in a COVID year, we only decarbonize 6 to 7% a year. It just shows the enormity of the situation, how we really need to leverage technology. It's all hands on deck, and also change our behaviors as well, change the way that we do things. So, a lot of effort is required for decarbonization. Personally, I think we can get there with good technology. On the left-hand side, I wanted to share maybe on the right-hand side, right, that global carbon mechanisms, right, to change behaviors of companies have been really intensifying. And if you see here on the right-hand side, it just goes to show ever since the 1990s, right, they started already, for example, Finland, first of all, with the Finnish carbon tax in 1990. Over the years, this has actually intensified, whether or not you're using an emission trading scheme mechanism or you're using a carbon tax mechanism. And, we know that, for either mechanisms, whether it's an ETS or a carbon tax, it's effective, but has its own advantages and disadvantages as well. But what this graph is saying is that if you continue to be high carbon, it will be very expensive, right? And one of the other areas as well is, I would say, border adjustments, which are also coming up as a key concern for businesses and a key concern for also countries as well. A case in point is actually the EU Fit for 55 plan that was announced by Hans Timmermans, about 3 months ago. And he said that any type, of a high carbon type of materials that want to be imported into Europe will have to have a carbon levy, right? So this really, why this really tries to close the gap, right, between, those countries which don't really have very high carbon mechanisms versus, say, for example, Europe. And the Europe is not only Europe's talking about it, but the US as well. There was some talk as well about pollution tax as well. So if you can see, right, you are, if you continue to be high carbon, it would be very costly. And it's going to be like that around the world, not only in your own country as well. On the left-hand side is a more recent event, which is the Temasek Ecosperity event. PwC was one of the sponsors. And in here, I think Minister Lawrence Wong said also that for Singapore carbon tax, which is currently between a price of $5 to $15 per CO2 ton, that will be set to increase. They'll review it as well. And now I wanted to, Esther talked about TCFD, what is it trying to achieve? And also Michael talked about it as well. This, I would say that the leaders of the TCFD, Mark Carney included, really had a lot of foresight. When they set this up about 4 years ago, it was meant to actually try to understand, and also report about climate risks, so that as if this information is not available, it was not be very good for the investment community. So, this needs to be disclosed so that capital can actually flow to the right places. But at the same time as well, organizations will be able to understand where is it the climate risk, whether or not is it physical, whether because they have a certain asset, a certain country which are more susceptible to climate change, such as flooding, or it could be that transitional risk in terms of carbon prices, or even border mechanisms are going to impact them. So you're looking at it from a transitional, meaning a cost perspective, and also from a more physical perspective as well. Having done a number of these TC scenario analysis, I would say that it is extremely useful, but at the same time as well, the information that you get back, right, is also quite scary. I think that CDL has assessed this and have used this appropriately to guide their next steps in terms of their strategy as well. For other types of industries that I've looked at in relation to cement, in relation to those who are related to the oil and gas industry, that future is a rather scary one. If you actually look out, right, 2030, you might not see the signs of the extremity of it, but if you look out 2040, 2050, you can see actually, how the climate risk and also physical risk will manifest. Now, this is just, but maybe before I go that, I think, there are, as what Michael said, there are a few pillars of that. This is not rocket science. How do you govern climate risk as you would have with other risks? How is it, that this fits into your strategy after how that impacts your organization? How is this imbued inside your risk management, into your everyday, into business as well, as part of all the different departments? And at the same time, what is it that you need to disclose in terms of metrics? Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions are common ones, or even intensity, or even, if you're an investment company, that would be WACI. So how does that actually, fit in terms of metrics and targets? And how are you going to plan to reduce the emissions going forward as well? This is just a way to frame it, which is very useful. On the left-hand side, I talked a little bit more about transition risk and physical risk. So transition risk, as I mentioned, is about policy, increases in carbon taxes, or it could be also around technology. Some of it might be obsolete already, or it could be building standards. So I think Esther talked a little bit about that. The other area is also physical risk, right? If you are, in Singapore, you will be susceptible to sea level rises. The Singapore government has put aside 100 billion, right, over the next 100 years to actually protect us against sea level rises. It's a lot of money, and it shows how large the issue could be. But transition risk and physical risk can play out differently in different scenarios. If you feel as if that you're heading towards a higher scenario, like a 3-degree scenario, your physical risk would be higher, but your transitional risks are lower, because you would, in a 3-degree scenario, probably not much policy push. In a 1.5 or 2, you probably have a lot more policy push, but less physical risk. In either situations, from my experience, both are significant and not immaterial from a financial P&L or balance sheet perspective. This is CDL's TCFD disclosure. It's very well written, but at the same time as well, I think it was featured as one of the best TCFD reports as well. But there are key steps to make sure the governance is in place, assess the materiality of climate-related risks, identify the scenarios. CDL has identified scenarios 1.5, 2, and also 4-degree scenarios early on. Evaluate what are the business impacts, what are the potential responses, and you disclose that. And this is one of the key slides which show the relativity, okay, of the different types of transition risk and also physical risk as it relates to your different business units as well, and across countries. Michael mentioned just now about, many bursars are actually, regulations are actually pushing for the disclosure of climate-related financial disclosures. Hong Kong MA, it can be, the Financial Conduct Authority as well, and now, at MAS as well, and now SGX. Well, based on the TCFD report of 2020, there are areas where there are gaps generally in the market, and generally it's around the scenario analysis part of it. But we can understand that because it's not so straightforward, rather complex. I don't want to go through this. Michael has already shared in terms of what they expect from year 1, year 2, and year 3 from in the consultation paper in relation to TCFD reporting. But I just wanted to share that things are moving very fast, and we have better information now. We have better information now in terms of planning what kind of scenarios. The current policies, leads us to believe, okay, that we're probably heading towards around a 3-degree scenario. Are we also going to have a sort of disorderly kind of scenario, which is like, you will probably get there in terms of 1.5, but we'll probably rush at the very end. It can be very disorderly. There are also scientific updates from the IPCC AR6 WG1 report that I shared just now. How is it that we can fit that in terms of physical risk, inside our models, in terms of scenario analysis, time frames? Are we looking at a 2030 timeframe, 2040, 2050, that will yield different types of results and allow you to see into the future what could happen? And also, I think that it is important that as your business grows, I think it is important to also reflect that in terms of your inputs as well. There are other regulatory changes. I talked about Singapore. I talked about even China and the ETS. Building standards have changed as well. Carbon border adjustments as well. So as these regulatory changes update itself, I think these should be input into the models as well. And now finally, I just wanted to say, I usually think about things in 3 manners: whether or not something is good to have, whether or not something is no harm trying, probably get a good benefit out from it, and whether or not something is not negotiable. I view TCFD, I view climate risk analysis as something which is not negotiable. And why so? Because we're already seeing the effects of climate change, and we do need to price this inside the financial markets and also avert climate change. And having gone through a number of these studies already, I do think it's very useful to assist companies to manage their risk and also to identify opportunities as well. So that's it from me, and I'm looking forward to a great dialogue later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yulin. And may I request all the speakers to switch on your camera, please? Well, this is really very heavy going in the content, and I think the audience get the message very loud and clear. Now, nobody is asking why we have to, step up on climate action, but I think the question now is like, how? Right? Everybody know, we should do it. But after listening to, all these presentation, I think, for those who are not familiar with sustainability, I think it probably causes more anxiety than clarity. So I would like to help to give a little bit more, clarity and also comforts to the audience that maybe all the panelists can help us to provide just some, tips how to fast track action to deal with all these risks. Okay, something that is more palatable to most company that was only starting the journey not too long. We know all the challenges. We heard all the hot soup of alphabets already. So how can you advise, whether to the directors, to the corporate management, to executives, how we can really start, the first step, and how we can help companies to build that competence and capacity? Yeah, so maybe I will ask Michael first, because your proposal, SGX proposal, is the one that caused all the anxiety first. Then after that will be Joe. How are you going to help, director, you better prepared? Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Esther. I think one thing that we've really concentrated on in this proposal is really the governance structure within the company, on looking at sustainability and how to equip people with the necessary knowledge, skill set, to do these things. So the proposal on directors training, I think, is very apt, something that we think that all directors need to understand, which is why there's a proposal for directors to undergo one-time training. And that's really to get everyone up to speed with the current developments, or at least have the same lingo or same language when they speak about sustainability. That's really the baseline, I guess, standard knowledge. I think the other in terms of grappling with this is really maybe thinking about it from what you are already doing now. Now all companies are producing reports, and all reports, majority, more than 90% of them purport to comply with the GRI standards. And they all contain the 5 primary components that we've set out in our reporting guidelines. And I think that gives a framework for understanding what sustainability is, right? Understanding your material ESG factors, what you're doing in relation to each of these, what's the board's responsibility or management's responsibility for these issues. And then climate is just an add-on to it. It's not, well, I mean, it is a huge science to it, but it is an add-on to what the current framework is. Even the TCFD 4 pillars that I think William has shared earlier, it actually fits in very nicely with our primary components. So I think firstly, getting an understanding, a baseline understanding of sustainability. Secondly, look at what you're currently already doing, because that's what the boards have produced reports on, right? And then think about how to step up to look at climate as well.
Great, Joe. How can SID
to
make life easier for our directors to play a more active role?
First up, I'd like to compliment SGX and my special Michael on the approach they're taking. I think the proposal they have is not just sound, it's not just in the right direction, but really the way they implemented this. I think this is while it's a stretch, but I think it's also done with a lot of care and a lot of care to ensure that the rest of the directors can follow through. So to actually coordinate and support SGH intention, what SID would like to do, as I mentioned earlier by sharing, is to have the 2-step approach to actually getting the directors ready. One is within the existing LED module, we're going to have a special content to actually help deepen our understanding of what the sustainability in terms of reporting. So that mirrors the expectations of SGX. On top of that, if there is an interest or a desire to understand a bit more, if sustainability is core to your business beyond just the mandatory reporting, there's a deeper dive standalone course that we're actually curating at this point in time. And that we're actually working with some of the top universities around the world to actually understand what will be actually relevant content. But I think I just want to echo what Michael said earlier. This is a fast evolving topic. So we effectively have to learn and adjust as we go along. So the content that we will curate will evolve through basically across time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. Simon and Yulin, do you have any, thoughts to add on? I mean, in your experience dealing with so many corporates, how would you, give, so-called shortcut for them to, start the ball rolling? Yeah, Yulin, yeah, I saw your mic unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I think the one shortcut is to. Okay, I do see that CSO, right, or sustainability is double-hatted in many organizations. I think that you do need to I guess dedicate resources to it, and that is one sure way to actually speed up the process in terms of adoption. So your CSO cannot be the CSO and then also lead this department and another department. It's not going to work out. So I would say have somebody dedicated to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about Simon?
Hey, thanks, Esther. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure it's a shortcut, but certainly there is a lot more to do in the sustainability space, and I think certainly you need more hands on deck, more trained hands on deck. So I think capacity, capability building from directors to management to teams involved in the data collection process is critical. Even auditors to audit, if the age of assurance, the regime of assurance does come, you will need an army of auditors to support that effort. So definitely more investment into capability building. I kind of agree with what Prof said earlier on also, in the sense that important thing is not to leave sustainability to only any one person in the organization. I think increasingly it needs to be a cultural change. I think teams need to have a better appreciation of why they're doing this, and that this is not a one-time event. It is something that's going to, it's a transformation that's going to end up to become a business as usual. So I think that's something is critical to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have two questions from our audience. One is about what are some of the key principles in evaluating investments, such as like ROI and ESG and the output and all. And then the other one is actually more for like accountants who will be probably in the best position to answer this. What she's asking is to elaborate on the IFRS-driven ISSB, Global Baseline for Climate Reporting, which is expected to be finalized in June 2022. Will this be a completely new set of standards, or will companies be compliant as long as they comply with TCFD? So I think all on the panel will be able to can address in your own right, especially the regulator. Sounds like there are a lot of more acronyms to be added on now. So Michael, do you want to address this first, then followed by Yulin and Simon? Yeah.
Okay, maybe I can talk a bit about, I guess, the ISSB, right, which is the International Sustainability Standards Board. So they've come out to say that they want to be set up by November this year, with their reporting standards set out by June next year, and they're going to focus on climate reporting standards first. I think all signs seem to point towards them using TCFD as a base and working very closely with GRI, SSB, the other standard setters. So I do not think that it will be completely new in the sense that it requires vastly different information, but I expect that given so much buy-in into TCFD reporting by everyone, this ISSB will be informed by what TCFD is looking at and trying to maybe give more flesh to the details of this reporting requirement.
Great. Yulin, you want to add on, please?
Yeah, sure. No issues. So Michael is right. The IFRS Foundation, who set up the International Sustainability Standard Board, it's a global governance platform. So ideally, I think they know how to set standards. Paul, your question about TCFD is a question which is asked by many people. We are already embarking on TCFD. Many companies have already started on how is this going to feature in the IFRS Foundation work. I would agree with Michael that they are already working very closely with them. I mean, I'm part of the the Sustainability Reporting Global Technical Group for this, and was just given an update yesterday. So under the International Sustainability Standards Board, there's what they call a TRWG, which is a technical working group. And the membership inside the technical working group is TCFD, the Value Reporting Foundation, the CDSB, the ISB, and the World Economic Forum. So I also expect that the standard that comes out, at least for the first part of it, will actually feature quite a lot in terms of the TCFD principles as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Simon, you have anything to add? Yeah.
So I think on the question from Bill relating to key principles, I think one thing we can look to is in July 21, I think 55 leading investors from an organization called Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, managing about 14 trillion in assets, and actually put out a position statement, right, to call on all their portfolio companies as well as companies at large to just do three things, right? So one is to disclose your net zero transition plan. Two is to identify a director responsible for the plan. Three is to write means for investors to vote annually on progress against the plan. Right. So these are essentially qualitative kind of requests, but that is for now a key thrust of investors' demands of companies. Right.
Great. Jill, do you have any, point on this? If not, I will just, because of in the interest of time, I will have to go to the last round of, questions already. Yeah, Jill, you have anything to add?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, fine. Okay. So now, because we only have about 3 minutes left, we have to only go through one final lightning round. Okay. One action that you would advise companies to immediately take, to address the 6th proposal by SGX, any of the 6, but companies cannot wait, but must take immediate action. Okay, Simon, you first, then Yulin, Joe, then last but not least is Michael. Thank you.
Well, I'll go back to my topic, I guess, which is basically prepare for assurance for a sustained report. That will require time. Like I said, even before you embark on the full assurance, you would need to start thinking about conducting a pre-assurance, right? So the runway is not that long. So I think start getting the house in order lah. And again, as I said, when you embark on audit, the fear is always about qualifications or material findings lah. So I think yeah.
Okay, great. Joe?
Okay, I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but I think the key thing is to look out for our courses and get yourself signed up. It's not just for directors, but I think even for management who's keen to understand what governance means in terms of in the topic of sustainability and ESG in general.
Great. Yulin?
Actually, Esther, very difficult to choose. All of the 6 are very close to my heart in terms of board diversity as well. But I will stick to my swim lane. I'll talk about TCFD. So for TCFD, I think that organizations should actually get strong support from I guess the very top to actually conduct this exercise. It is extremely intellectually stimulating. And I would recommend that you get leadership, but at the same time approach this with excitement, because it is a very, very interesting area and very useful as well.
Great. Okay, Michael, you have the last word.
But I think maybe going back to your earlier questions as well, I think first one is to understand before you can actually assess and take any action. Right? And there's a plethora of I think causes out there. SGX itself, we're organizing a series of TCFD reporting workshops as well in the next few months, working together with the UN Sustainability Stock Exchanges Initiative to roll out educational introductory TCFD workshops. And as and when the rules are implemented, we're also going to look at capacity building workshops for preparers of reports. I mentioned about directors training, so I think upscaling is definitely the first step to take, and there'll be a lot more coming up.
Wonderful. So if I may summarize, it is like, governance structure has to be effective, truly integrated. Board engagement is very important. Leadership commitment, there's no compromise on that. And most importantly, also capacity and knowledge building. And materiality study, climate change scenario planning, putting on your, forward-looking lens are all important for sustainability. And with that, I would really like to thank all the, panelists to share their insight and their knowledge. And I will return it back to Marilyn now.
On behalf of Leong and CDL Group of Companies, we would like to thank the panelists and moderator for the robust and engaging discussion. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Sherman Kwek, Group CEO of CDL, to deliver the closing remarks. Over to you, Sherman.
Thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate it. Hope you can. Okay, great. I was going to say, please take away that picture of myself on the screen while I give my remarks. It'll be too distracting, but thank you for that. So, directors, management, colleagues, as well as our distinguished speakers, Prof. Loh, who has already logged off, Michael, Joe, Simon, and Yulin. Real good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining us at the 8th Leong and CDL Group Sustainability Forum. We have held this annual event since 2014, when ESG issues were simply deemed as good to have business practices. So over the years, I would like to think that the forum has helped our group companies to stay abreast of the latest sustainability trends and global best practices. I mean, as Esther had mentioned earlier, I mean, in light of the state of the pandemic, we have to make this year's session fully virtual to keep everyone safe. So I'm still very grateful that everyone took the time to join us Obviously, virtual is not as interactive and engaging, as physical, but such are the times we live in. So today I think we were very privileged to have heard from sustainability experts from SGX RegCo, from SID, and our academic and advisory consultants. I noticed that every speaker, one by one, had remarked that it's a very hard act to follow when it comes to speaking after such engaging presentations that are even filled with music. So you can imagine my pressure, right? I mean, it's far worse now. I mean, all of you actually gave very, very engaging and enlightening so-called discussions and presentations. So a real thanks to that. I mean, but pressure is great here for me to do the closing remarks. But on a more serious note, I mean, I think all of our speakers have helped us to gain a great insight into this very complex and fast evolving sustainability reporting landscape. I think the message to listed companies is clear, right? I mean, ESG integration and reporting are essential. You have to set clear goals, you have to do accurate tracking, you have to do prompt disclosure. I mean, I think these are all critical to address the rising expectations for regulators, investors, you name it, And of course, we have also heard from Prof. Loh, Michael, Joe, and Simon on the expectations of and Yulin on the expectations of the board's role in driving the ESG agenda towards a more sustainable future. Over the last 2 years, the importance of sustainability reporting has been escalated by the rapid growth of ESG investments and investors' rising concerns about ESG risk. Just last month, this Principles for Responsible Investment, or PRI, as we call them, of which actually CDL is now a signatory. PRI did announce this investor statement that was signed by 54 prominent global investors, right, representing more than 9 trillion US in AUM, and basically they support the EC, the European Commission's proposals to tighten ESG reporting requirements for companies, including rules to bring sustainability reporting on par with financial reporting. So this is actually very big news indeed, and really highlights the urgency for businesses to accelerate their action to tackle the rising climate-related and fiscal and transition risk related to this climate change. When it comes to climate change, I don't need to tell you how bad things are. I mean, at last year's forum, for those of you who attended, I even mentioned about how this 1.5 degree temperature rise cap by 2030 that the whole world is trying to focus on. I even mentioned that, it may not be achievable. Many people have said that we are, already too late to change things significantly enough to cap the temperature rise at 1.5 degrees by 9 years from now. So, and this is something which Yulin echoed in her presentation as well, right? I mean, and Yulin even said, right? I mean, even in a COVID year like last year, right? I mean, we didn't even decarbonize that much, So it's quite sad, I mean, to see the state that we're in already. I mean, however, that doesn't mean we shouldn't give it our best shot. I mean, the world is facing devastating consequences of climate change, as reiterated by the UN's latest report, which, as Esther had said earlier, calls it a code red for humanity. So, and the truth is, despite rising climate action since COP21, right? I mean, global warming has just continued, trending upwards. I mean, July of this year, 2021, was officially the hottest month in recorded history. So very bad news for us and our planet, indeed. In fact, I thought I'll also just mention that earlier this week, it was on Monday, so 2 days ago, many of you may have seen this Straits Times article on coral reefs, and it was a very disturbing, article when I read it, right? I mean, findings have showed that, for the 10-year period between 2009 and 2018, there was a loss of 14% of the coral from the world's coral reefs, right? Primarily caused by recurring large-scale bleaching events. In all, this is about 11,700 square kilometers of hard coral, right? I mean, that was eviscerated, right? I mean, this is a lot, okay? And to put it in context, this is more than all the coral currently living on Australia's coral reefs, right? And for those of you who wonder what's the importance, right? I mean, coral reefs occupy less than 1% of the ocean floor, but are home to more than 25% of marine life. You know, so very disturbing indeed. I mean that this happening. However, there is also, of course, some cause for encouragement, which is the report did also reveal that the coral reefs have this incredible ability to recover when they are not disturbed by local and global threats. So again, this emphasized swift climate action is extremely important. Undoubtedly, climate risks are investment risks, right? And the business case for ESG reporting has never been stronger. I mean, we were privileged to be the first Singapore company to publish a dedicated standalone sustainability report in 2008. And since then, we have done 14 sustainability reports. So, I think, as I always mention, including at last year's forum, I think regardless of where you are in your sustainability journey, right? I mean, and this may all sound very scary to you, but I think there is no better time, I think, to really push forward and strengthen your efforts. I mean, as it is already, you've heard from several of the panelists, right? We have to gear up for more stringent requirements on sustainability reporting, particularly on climate strategy and impact. And I know it's very painful. I mean, Lord knows we have gone through a lot of pain ourselves. It involves significant time, effort, resources within your company. But as I mentioned earlier, the business case for reporting has never been stronger. Okay, we have always firmly believed that what gets measured gets managed. So the reporting helps us to identify gaps, take strategic action to improve, and set goals that can future-proof our business and raise our operational performance. So, I think it's very important that we embrace the reporting that is already upon us. In fact, as Michael showed in the schedule earlier, right? I mean, and we have to start really thrusting forward. I mean, we do applaud SGX, and their latest proposals that urge companies to step up on climate-related reporting based on the TCFD recommendations. We ourselves have embraced the TCFD framework, in our reporting since 2017. So a few years ago, I mean, but at least, we have now, understood it well and are getting better at it. I mean, and it has not only helped us to, I think, track and manage our climate performance, but it has guided us to refine our strategy and driven our risk adaptation efforts to this ever-changing climate challenges. I think as Yulin has mentioned earlier, right? I mean, TCFD and climate risks, these are non-negotiable. So, like all business priorities, ESG issues will be best managed with the collective efforts by the board and management together. CDL's Board Sustainability Committee was established in 2012. Prof. Loh put up, the thing earlier showing, who our committee comprised of. And this committee has played a key role in accelerating our ESG strategies. It has given a lot of much needed advice and support to the sustainability function at the management levels for nearly a decade now. I mean, and as Prof. Loh has emphasized, right, a company needs to internalize the sustainability vision. Therefore, I think it's very important to get the board and senior management all involved in setting and supporting the sustainability vision and best practices. Earlier, Simon had also emphasized the importance of getting everyone involved. And this is a cultural change. You can't just have one person or one small department trying to drive this, right? I mean, you will end up hitting your head on a brick wall. So really, it's an organizational-wide thing that needs to be embraced and starting at the very top. And so therefore, this is something I think that all of you who are attending this forum can also consider for your respective boards. As Joe had mentioned earlier, right? I mean, SID will be providing more resources to help directors and management to get more familiar. So please do sign up for these courses. And Michael had also added, right? I mean, there are also many courses out there. So help is at hand. It's just a question of we have to be proactive in seeking it out. Maybe, hitting closer to home for CDL is the built environment. The built environment is responsible for nearly 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions, GHG. And therefore, the built environment actually is in a very prime position to move the needle in this global race to zero, right, to net zero. For us at CDL, we have been an early adopter of global goals, and we have, we signed up to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs in 2016. We signed on to the UN Global Compact 1.5 degree business ambition in 2019. And in February this year, as Esther had mentioned in the presentation, right, we took a bold step and became the first real estate conglomerate in Southeast Asia to sign the WGBC, the World Green Building Council's net zero carbon buildings commitment. It is very, very ambitious, and will be very tough for us, but it is a necessary move, I think, to make ourselves future ready for a low carbon economy. And our commitment is backed by prudent assessment and robust planning. So we have a clear pathway for how we want to achieve our goals by 2030. And as I said, it will not be easy, right? This is a huge challenge, even for CDL, which has been an early, adopter and early embracer of sustainability. But we don't have a choice, right? We have to do our part towards saving our planet, and we have to put in our full commitment and allocate the necessary resources. We firmly believe in the power of education, advocacy, and partnership in changing mindsets and shaping climate action. I've often said that engaging our stakeholders and especially our supply chain also remains a key part of our agenda, and we definitely still need to do a better job there. We have a long way to go. To get up, to where we need to be. Everyone should also, I think, consider this important part of engaging your stakeholders and supply chain, because this can make a very big difference. As part of Singapore's Climate Action Week this July, we opened this exhibition called Change the Present, Save the Future. This was in collaboration with National Parks and Parks. I also thought I'll use this chance to, so-called advertise for them. Advertise for this exhibition. If you get the chance, please head down to Singapore Botanic Gardens. There we have our net zero CDL Green Gallery. And it's actually a very nice, engaging exhibition. Lots of, photographs contributed by, nature enthusiasts and stuff as well. And many names that you'll see there who gave quotes and photographs. So hope many of you can take the time to go down and take a look. The other thing that, we opened in 2017 was this Singapore Sustainability Academy, or SSA for short. It's located at our City Square Mall at Kitchener Road. And, we're really glad, when we first opened this net zero facility, it was a very, very huge partnership, right? It involved 6 government agencies, 15 industry and NGO partners, we're really glad to see that, this SSA has actually become such a well-utilized facility. We hosted more than 450 sustainability-related training programs and advocacy events, and this involved more than 20,000 attendees. Even during COVID last year, we didn't let it deter us, and we continued to hold free virtual workshops. These virtual workshops have reached out to thousands of participants spanning over 25 countries. So again, hopefully, you all can join us for one of our workshops or events at the SSA, as and when they come up. And, Esther earlier had flashed up this slide, right, showing you the SG Green Plan 2030 by our Singapore government, a multi-ministry effort. One of the 5 pillars there, emphasize the 5th pillar, emphasize about food security as well. This is a key priority for a resilient nation. So, I'm also really happy to announce that we recently partnered with this local enterprise called Grow Bricks. GROBRIX, GrowBricks. I'm not sure how they came up with the name. But anyway, GrowBricks, they do this zero waste hydroponic modular system at the SSA actually. So, and this hydroponic modular system actually allows us to harvest fresh and chemical-free leafy greens every few weeks there. And it is our hope that this will pave the way for large-scale implementation of indoor farming or urban agriculture, as you call it, at residential or even commercial spaces. In fact, I have to say I'm very grateful to Esther. So Esther, thank you. I mean, she gave me a surprise yesterday. She arranged for a whole bag of greens to be delivered to my office yesterday. So, when I brought it home last night and showed them to my wife, she was absolutely thrilled, and she was examining the vegetables, and she said, she said she had never seen such fresh vegetables, stuff like kale and all that. She had never seen such fresh vegetables before. So we will be having it for dinner tonight, and for all those that want to know, I'll let you know how it tastes after I've had a chance to try out the food. But it's great to see such initiatives that can better our own health as well. ESG and investment funds and sustainable finance, I think, are important enablers in driving innovative solutions and technologies. So we ourselves, we have also been harnessing technology to achieve the three deliverables that Esther showed in the earlier slide. So that's decarbonization, digitalization and innovation, as well as disclosure of ESG performance. So, one example of this is our partnership with this Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore, or SERIS, as we call them. We did this, we have started this one-year pilot of a printed bifacial building integrated PV panels, so solar panels at our City Square Mall roof garden in November last year, actually. And it serves as a test bed for more innovative application of solar energy. We believe, as I mentioned earlier, right? I mean, that through collaborations, we can then, create the right solutions. And, with collaboration and partnership, our action and impact will be amplified. And this will accelerate our pathway towards a net zero built environment. So I think, in closing, I mean, the world has awakened to the fact that climate change is an existential threat to humanity, right? The worst I think we've ever faced. The momentum of climate action is not only fast expanding amongst government, but also in the private sector. Companies need to invest, need to innovate and change the way they do business so as to create a long-term sustainable value. And if we want to remain relevant, we must embrace sustainability at the core of our business to achieve a strong and balanced triple bottom line. After all, without a healthy planet, I mean, there will not be the people and the markets to sustain businesses and economies. So to mitigate the worst possible outcomes of this climate change, I think we must take bold steps and go further and faster within a larger ecosystem to build a more resilient future for everyone. So, once again, in closing, I'd just like to convey my sincere appreciation to our guest speakers today for sharing their invaluable insights. And of course, to all of you, our attendees, for your support and for taking the time out to attend the session today. To the forum organizers comprising our CDL's sustainability and corporate secretariat teams, well done again on organizing yet another successful forum, albeit virtual this time, but still nonetheless very informative and I believe extremely useful for all the attendees. So thank you again to everyone. Please do take care and stay safe and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the 8th Leong and CDL Group Annual Sustainability Forum. It has been a pleasure having you